Members have got in front of them some presentation slides just to aid the discussion in this, and this will these don't all cover item 6 but also item 7 and 8, which I'm sure the Chair will come on to separately. But in respect of item 6, what this update first slide is really just trying to do is provide a recap of the draft local plan statement of consultation 2016, what it generated in respects of council actions, and to also provide you, as the new committee, a summary of the progress that's been made on addressing those key actions that were approved in September last year. The Basildon Borough Draft Local Plan members will be aware was subject to a 10-week public consultation that occurred between January and March 2016, engaging publicly at least over 2,000 people at public exhibitions and many more in terms of face-to-face transactions and by representations. As you can see, 21,600 plus actual representations were made, and the majority of those were from local residents. A statement of consultation is a legal document that the council as a planning authority must prepare when it carries out statutory local plan consultations. That statement summarised the consultation messages that were made and also set out the council responses to them. 49 key actions were first considered by the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee on the 13th of September, which the debate at which resulted in a further 3 actions being recommended to the then Cabinet to incorporate into the statement. Cabinet approved the statement of consultation with 52 key actions on the 29th of September, and the mandate to carry those out was therefore awarded to officers. What we have done in respects of the discussion of these key actions that are set out in the next slides, they're not in action order, but they're in thematic order to help group them together with common actions. So what I'm going to go through is just a summary of where we are with each of those actions and what is left to do. So as members will note and may have obviously read about in local press, the South Essex Strategic Housing Market Assessment, SHMAR, and apologies, there's loads of acronyms in this, and sometimes they're our friends, sometimes they're our foe. The addendum was published in June 2017. That marks nearly a year's worth of update work to addendum work to the Strategic Housing Market Assessment. That has been completed. Outcomes of that are indicating that the objectively assessed need, that is the emerging position on how many homes might be required over a long-term period, is that is rising from the levels previously assessed to a level that is just shy of 20,000 homes until 2034. I was going to say 6, but Amanda's commented in my ear then, 34. Separately, the Chair, there has been conversations with the Chair about whether a separate briefing for the committee on that, as it's so complex, might be beneficial. Drafts awaiting review, so there is other South Essex work going on at the moment. South Essex Economic Development Needs Assessment, affectionately known as EDNA. That's been commissioned by Thurrock along with a retail and the commercial leisure capacity study. These are key elements of evidence to understand our growth needs in respect to the local plan. The drafts are due at the end of this month, with the finalisation of those completed in August. If we turn over the page, there has also been a number of areas of borough-wide evidence that has been underway, and the majority of these so far have been completed. I'll mention a bit later on the new and alternative sites consultation. It's a slide on its own. But the new and alternative sites consultation was an action approved by Cabinet, which was completed last year. Potential development sites have also been subject to more detailed environmental studies to look at ecology, to look at their landscape capacity, to look at the presence of potential archaeology, to examine air quality, and also to carry out sustainability appraisal, which is required by law. Those have been completed for all potential sites across the borough. In addition, parking capacity and intervention study and a hotel needs study were jointly prepared for the local plan and also the regeneration teams to examine those particular items and in terms of how the local plan might need to respond going forward. Some members may have been present at the briefing. Members will remember that a Greenbelt study has been done in 2013, has been updated in 2015, and an independent review of the Greenbelt study's approach was carried out, which members received the outcome of in April. This has meant that the Greenbelt study itself has been updated. And the independent reviewer, as members might remember, regarded that the approach that the council had used to carry out the Greenbelt study was considered to be robust, subject to some changes to its presentation. In addition, indices of multiple deprivation and population density data, which I think was one of the things which the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee added in for the sustainability appraisal, have now been incorporated and they will now be tested as part of the assessment. In addition, a playing pitch relocations option study for a specific site, which many of you may know at Gardeners Lane South, has also now been completed within the last week. So that is quite hot off the press. In terms of elements which are in draft form, that are awaiting reviewing by officers to determine whether they meet their specification and are appropriate. We have highway impact modelling and site access appraisals for all sites across the borough carried out by the County Council and Ringway Jacobs, its consultant. They are expected to be completed by the end of this month. Egyptian traveller needs assessment update. A draft has been delivered and we are currently reviewing that. Which should be completed by early August. A serviced settlement review which focuses on Ramsden Bell House and Crays Hill and the proposals that the draft local plan had for the village's expansion has been received and also is due for completion by the end of this month. Local plan viability assessment which tests whether or not the local plan and its proposals can be reasonably afforded and whether development is therefore viable, is due back by the end of August. And as it says there, the renewable energy and low carbon study is being updated for also completion by the end of next month. Members may recall that there were 3 areas that attracted quite a lot of attention in terms of public comments, which are identified as Southwest Billericay, which was along a proposed relief route in the local plan. East Basildon, which is east of Pitsea and between Bowers Gifford, where there were proposals for over 2,000 homes, and Gardeners Lane South in central Basildon. Cabinet approved the commissioning of high-level development frameworks to examine what was actually possible within these locations, within their land budgets, to test whether the specific infrastructure options for highways, schools, playing pitches and green space on an area level, evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of different scales and densities of development to deliver the infrastructure required, and also engaging with developers and the site promoters to explore the options that have emerged from that work and their ideas. Drafts are with the council on all of those, and they are currently going through a period of checking and validation to determine whether or not they're complete. Next page, so starts evidence-based borough actions 21, 26, 29. These areas, these key actions are awaiting commission, but are dependent on further work being completed first. So there is a highway mitigation test which needs to be completed. That can't be done until the recommended set of sites has been established as part of the local plan preparation. A Gypsy and Traveller site potential study was done in 2015. That requires to be updated. Now the needs assessment has been done. That has been commissioned and is due to complete by October. In addition, the legal assessments for sustainability appraisal and habitat regulations assessment need the final sets of recommended policies before they can be completed. That covers the infrastructure area. In terms of the groups on, evidence area, in terms of infrastructure, which is the next set of actions, as members can see, workshops and meetings have taken place with the Clinical Commissioning Group and NHS England, as well as a number of other acute, primary, mental and community health providers to help them understand more about the local plan and also to help us understand more about their pressures and requirements in respects of planning going forward. Meetings have taken place, several meetings have taken place with Essex County Council in respect of education planning. Members might recall that school was a particular area of interest to members of the public and probably members of the council in terms of how these areas needed, how these schools needed, new schools needed to be provided and which ones could be expanded. Essex County Council are therefore directly involved in the work that I've just described on high-level development frameworks and also all of the site appraisals to try and ensure that there is a greater joined-up approach to the planning and provision of education going forward. Meetings continue with Essex County Council with other statutory functions, strategic planning, highway, public transport, flooding, to consider how best to mitigate any impact that a local plan might otherwise cause on those policy areas. Officers have met with Network Rail, Greater Anglia and Trenitalia C2C about the railway station facilities in the borough, particularly in terms of car parking capacity and options to increase that capacity in stations across the borough, as well as the investment in rail services. Meetings have taken place with Essex Police and the East of England Ambulance Service to consider how the local plan can best help their estate. Bear in mind there's a land use implication and service needs going forward. Differently, dialogue continues with Essex Fire and Rescue to consider their estate and service needs. I think to emphasise the difference there, more work is required with the fire service to bottom out any issues they may have going forward. There has been greater difficulty in engaging the fire service in respect of the local plan. Meetings have also continued. Councillor Fellows mentioned this a little bit earlier from the preceding item about better broadband. Meetings have taken place in respect of the local plan with BT, Virgin and Superfast Essex. That's been in association with the Economic Development team and also the Council's own ITC teams to determine how the local plan can improve the broadband provision as far as its role allows. In terms of the next page, there is just a little bit of an overview here on the new and alternative sites consultation that was conducted in 2016. Consultation on 7 new sites and 10 alternative site proposals was carried out between November and December 2016. We received just over 1,600 comments from around 800 consultees. Again, similarly to the local plan, most of those have come from local residents. The analysis of those comments has now been completed. Highway access and historic impact have been the main issues that can be extracted from that. Members will receive a fuller report on that at the next committee meeting on the 1st of August, which will be seeking the approval of the statement of consultation and any further key actions in addition to these 52 that it generates, after which all the comments will be published on the Council's website verbatim so that they can be seen in open and transparent format. Nearly there. Was 57. Action 24 was specifically involving the liaison with, a better liaison with Brentford Borough Council concerning the border that the boroughs share to the west. Meetings between leaders and chief executives occurred in late 2016 as part of the legal duty to cooperate. Officers, as an outcome of that, were directed to work jointly on two pieces of work. They surrounded landscape separation of the two boroughs and also infrastructure provision, which were the areas that the statement of consultation noted as being the key areas of concern. After some procurement challenges, the landscape separation study was commissioned late last year, and we are due to receive a report. Both councils due to receive a report shortly on that, and once that's been received, we'll be able to determine how quickly that can be published. Infrastructure provision is also an area of work. Both councils, in respect of anything happening around the border, are working with the infrastructure providers on. In respect of Action 11, which concerns the key strategic routes of the A127, A13 and A130, we have now got to a position where the Essex County Council are leading on a review of what's called the A127 Corridor for Growth Strategy. That is now about 3 years old, but it requires updating to reflect the growth aspirations of all of the local authorities along its route. It's quite complex, bearing in mind it's not just the local planning authorities, and similar activities are now being pursued along the A13 and the A130. This involves, in respect to the A127, Southend-on-Sea, Essex County Council, Thurrock and Transport for London. They are the highway authorities of the A127 across its different areas, together with all the boroughs and districts along the A127 route, in addition to Chelmsford, Malden and the London Borough of Havering. So there's quite a complex piece of engagement and continued activity in the interests of the A127, and the same is going to be repeated for the A13 and A130. To support the local plans in respect of the A127, state what's called a Statement of Common Ground, which is an agreement of the actions taken to date as a collective group, is being prepared to support local plans as they evolve. Now we get to where most of the actions lie, which is in terms of planned redrafting. Initial redrafting of the less complex chapters is underway. Officers are doing that as the evidence comes through, and resolutions to issues or problems identified in the earlier consultation stages have been found or not, and therefore policy recommendations will reflect those. That's going to be done as a track change document, so members can see clearly the differences between the draft in 2016 and the new one which is emerging. Redrafting of the more complex chapters cannot really start until those key pieces of evidence are finalised, otherwise we would be guessing what the outcome of the local plan would be, and that's not in accordance with the law. They cover areas such as the big ticket items, if you like, such as housing, economy, the site allocations and infrastructure. They will be worked on alongside an infrastructure delivery plan, which was in draft form in 2016 but is being updated for the new version, Once those pieces of evidence have been completed and the potential sites that might be recommended to you are fully evaluated. The sustainability appraisal and strategic environmental assessments are required by law. No getting out of these ones. These test whether or not the plan, whatever format it emerges into, is broadly acceptable in respect of national policy and is seeking to try to achieve its best for the social, economic and environmental factors that exist in the borough. Strategic environmental assessment is required by law and is separate but focuses on particular sites. We are currently in the process of seeking some solutions with the South Essex authorities and neighbouring authorities under the duty to cooperate for matters which Natural England raised in their objection to our habitat regulations assessments. In addition, we are incorporating new air quality and archaeological data into the baseline of those two pieces of work in order to ensure that we meet the statement of consultation concerns. Action 4 and 49, which was the phasing strategy and financial statements, they cannot commence until the full recommended sites are developed and the corresponding infrastructure requirements are finalised. But they will be completed before the local plan comes back. In terms of next steps, and to summarise, work on the 52 key actions will continue until they have concluded. This committee will consider the new and alternative site statement of consultation and any further key actions it generates at the next meeting on the 1st of August. At the same meeting, the Infrastructure Growth and Development Committee will be considering the terms of reference for an independent review of Greenbelt and infrastructure capacity impacts. Members, just so the room's aware, this was not one of the 52 key actions, but was approved by through Cabinet Member Decision Record on the 24th of May this year, as an additional action that should be carried out before the local plan is finalised. As we don't know the outcome of, as that's to be commissioned once the terms of reference have been finalised, we don't know what impact that will have on the timescales for the local plan. It is therefore proposed that the local development scheme, which is the local plan statutory timetable for preparation, will come back to this committee on the 14th of September, and that will be setting out the recommendations as to when we think your local plan can be ready in its next form and in its final form. That recommendation will be for this committee to refer that to full council on the 12th of October. You will then have an idea of when the publication, the local plan will be ready for submission to the Secretary of State.
Thank you, everyone. Now for questions. Councillor Waggett?
Thank you. Sorry, if I appear to be dense, it's just because I am. The local plan obviously has had quite a lot of member input in the past, and quite rightly, a lot of member interest. I'm now just trying to get my head around this in the new format. It's clear that there's numerous actions that are being resolved, that there's shed loads of meetings taking place and assessments being done. In the old framework of the cabinet system, how many meetings a month roughly did the cabinet member have in this sort of area? Two a month. So does that mean then that those sort of meetings that you would have had with him would now be plugged into this committee? Because Casual Papodra was saying that she's done nothing in the last 50 days. And now, how are members going to be plugged in? If this committee is about making decisions and policy, would we need to either set up a subcommittee to meet twice a month to do the job? Or is it somehow deferred elsewhere? How's it going to work?
Well, in terms of member engagement, you obviously have the ability to set up subcommittees or working groups. And I'll leave that to Emma to wax lyrical about that, because that's not my areas of expertise. In respects of meetings are being programmed into the diary with the chairman of this committee on the same frequency as we used to meet the cabinet member. As to whether or not a subcommittee needs to be formed for you to satisfactorily deal with the business of the local plan, I think that's something which you need to consider and debate yourselves. I don't know if Lorraine has anything to add there.
No, not really. It's an issue for members about how much involvement and how you want to go about making those decisions. That would be my view. I agree with that.
So I thought the committee system was that members had the opportunity to get involved. I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood the committee system. The other thing was as well, and just a point, the next steps that are in the update, I'm going to say they actually read like a scrutiny next steps, not a policy making next steps. And I'm just sort of, agreeing terms of reference, everything else is what scrutiny committees do. And I really do think that there should be more policy direction.
Sorry, Matt, before you continue, just as chair of this meeting, I appreciate that some members here may have been part of scrutiny groups before, but other members in this room weren't. As you said, this isn't a scrutiny committee, and quite frankly, keep referring to scrutiny doesn't really assist members that weren't part of it, because they can't really follow what you're saying, frankly. So if it's a question on this and the steps going forward, welcome it, but keep referring to scrutiny really doesn't help matters unless you're going to explain what the scrutiny did.
Okay,
And really this isn't the place for that.
Actually, Chair, I would disagree, because scrutiny is actually looking at a policy that's been set up and challenging it. This is supposed to be setting policy. The next steps here are what any member here that's sat on the scrutiny committee would expect to see. They'd expect to see have a look at the terms of reference, consider an update. Considering an update means work has been done, and that is a scrutiny process. This committee should be setting policy, which is actually providing input for the update to actually happen. Does that make it clear for anybody who hasn't done scrutiny?
Councillor McGeorge.
It is all well and good going on about the scrutiny and saying we need to set the policies, this, that and the other. Until all these steps have been completed, everything is there in front of us, we can't set any policies. We put the cart in front of the horse. Once all reports are done, we come back and then we can look at what we're doing rather than saying this hasn't been done. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I was just going to make much the same comment as Councillor Mitchell, sorry, as I can't mention everything there. As said, this is not an point at which a decision can be made. It's an update on where we are at the moment. Once we've got all the information, then as Elizabeth said, we can then go forward in terms of making a decision.
I believe Councillor Fellows was next, then Councillor Morris and Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, just a couple of points. I never really got my head around completely the increased housing numbers from 16,000-ish to just slightly under 20,000. Was that something that was mandated on us from above, from government policy, or was it under our assessment?
I'm going to ask Amanda to come in on this project in more detail.
So the planning practice guidance, which helps us interpret what the National Planning Policy Framework says, refers us to something called the CLG household projections, which are produced by the Department for Communities and Local Government, and they give an indication of how household growth is going to change into the future, and that's what you have to use for your base for your objectively assessed need for housing. And it's very clear in the PPG that that's what you have to use. And every 2 years, a new set of household projections is issued. So the work that we did that gave rise to the figure that was used in the draft local plan was based on 2012 figures. In 2016, they published the 2014 based figures, and therefore we had to update the strategic housing market assessment to take that projection into account as opposed to the one that was earlier than that. So it is kind of mandated, I suppose, through that planning practice guidance.
Okay, let's just follow on from that then. So between 2012 and 2014, the OAN, or the figures from the OAN went from 16,000 to 20,000, an increase of 4,000. Is there any particular indication what caused that uplift?
Well, they use trend-based data. So in the period for 2012, they used a 5-year period before that, looking at the trend over that time in terms of change in the population in the borough, what had happened in terms of births, in terms of deaths, and in terms of migration. And then that's projected forwards. And that was over the period of the recession, so covering the period from about 2008 through to 2012. The 2014 base figures then start coming out of the recession, and we have had a pickup in terms of build rates and so forth within Basildon Borough, which then consequently changes your migration patterns and so forth. And you end up with a trend that then, when projected into the future, is higher than what you would if you took the 2012 base data. It's mathematical problem.
Just to emphasise, the OAN that came out of the 2016 Strategic Housing Market Assessment was a range, 15,260 to 17,000 something or other. We pumped for a housing target of 16,000. So the 16,000 is the mid, it was the rough midpoint. But the upper end was in the 17,000, just for clarity.
If I may, a second question to in this report, Matt, you've detailed that all of the analysis work was done with now major infrastructure in the borough. One thing I've not seen is any impacts that the final route of the Lower Thames Crossing has had on your or the work. I'm sure that's been taken into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, so Lower Thames Crossing, so now we have a preferred route of the Lower Thames Crossing. That's what a number of us have been waiting for some time, because it's been very difficult to incorporate that into our transport models unless we knew where it was being plugged into the network. Separately to this, Basildon Council undertakes bilateral meetings with Highways England. They occur every quarter to every 6 months or so, which provide us with an update of their project. And also we're able to update them on the progress of the local plan and the thinking emerging behind where growth may or may not be going. In respects of the what has come out of the decision as to where the route is going is now Highway England are now incorporating the wider network models in their own models, and they are sharing the data, which is satisfying a concern this council raised in its consultation response to the Lower Thames Crossing, that it didn't measure any impact in South Essex other than in Thurrock. There were no there were no suggestions that there would be a behavioural change from the A12 to the A30 to pick up the Lower Thames Crossing, which had been an assumption really, certainly in some of our reviews of the work. So going forward, Highways England are on the projects for the A127 and A13, which is where the route, the latter, where the route will intersect. And it's as part of that discussion and joint working that work on the Lower Thames crossing and how it may or may not impact upon the South Essex Road network will be considered further.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Before I make my point, if I might make a suggestion, Chairman, I'm in a better position than you are. I can see all the members without having to look in both directions. It might be worth reviewing the seating positions for the next meeting.
Thank you. I'll definitely take that into consideration.
Right. My question is with regards to the public consultations. In work on action on the 52 actions, it says that the consultation November to December 2016, 1,600 comments received, and that the analysis completed. So I'm assuming that action has been taken on on those consultations. Is that correct?
Okay. So to clarify, the new and alternative sites consultation, you will have the output of that, the summary of what's happened in terms of the level of response, where people responded from, which parts of the borough, whether they were a resident, whether they were developer, etc. What they said, what the council's recommended actions, recommended responses are, and any recommended actions at the next committee. So you will be receiving a report on the statement of consultation to the new and alternative sites on the 1st of August. So the analysis has been complete, the recommended actions and responses have been prepared, and it is for you to consider those and vote on them at your next meeting.
Could you tell me the initial consultation, the January to March 2016, when there was 21,600 plus representations made, where is that with regards to analysis and actions?
So that has been analysed. Cabinet approved the responses to those and all of the actions at its meeting on the 29th of September. All of those comments are published verbatim on the council's website and are publicly searchable. So as a council, you've already discharged your legal duties in respect of the comments submitted in early 2016. Into how we have to do it for the planning spectrum.
Yeah, so every change that has been made has a change number, it's detailed, and there is a column, it's in front of the table, there is a column next to it that explains the reason for that change. So if it links back to a representation that was made, it says it links back to the representation, gives the representation number. If it comes out with a piece of evidence, then it will say that it came out with this piece of evidence. If it's a typo that we fixed, it says it's a typo that we fixed. So it's going to be a very long table, I suspect, bearing in mind we're editing a 300-page document. But that's how we've started to construct it, and it's a bit time consuming, but it's working in terms of being able to provide that audit throughout.
I propose we vote to note this update. Okay, right, on to the 7th item on the agenda.